Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Daily English. I'm Mike. Today is a very special episode. You're going to discover your real English level, from A1 beginner all the way to C2 expert. Here's how this works. You'll listen to 6 speakers. Each one speaks at a different level. No test, no stress. Just listen naturally and see which stories feel comfortable and which ones feel challenging. If one story feels easy and the next one feels difficult, that's perfect. That's exactly how you find your level. Ready? Let's begin. First up is A1, the beginner level. At this level, English is simple and clear. Sentences are short. Words are common. Grammar is basic. You'll hear present simple tense, simple vocabulary about daily life, and very direct descriptions. If you understand this story easily, congratulations, your English is at least A1. Now, let's meet our first speaker. Her name is Emma.
Hello, my name is Emma. I am 24 years old. I live in a small apartment. My apartment has 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, and 1 bathroom. It is small, but I like it. Every morning, I wake up at 6:30. I get up and I go to the bathroom. I wash my face, I brush my teeth, then I make breakfast. I eat toast with butter. I drink orange juice. Sometimes I eat an egg. After breakfast, I get dressed. I put on my work clothes. Then I leave my apartment. I walk to work. It takes 15 minutes. I work in a coffee shop. I make coffee for customers. I also make sandwiches. My job is easy. I like my boss. She is very kind. At 12 o'clock, I eat lunch. I eat a salad or soup. I drink water. After lunch, I work again. At 4 o'clock, I finish work. I am tired. I go home. Sometimes I stop at the store. I buy bread, milk, and fruit. When I get home, I change my clothes. I sit on the sofa. I watch TV for 1 hour. At 7 o'clock, I cook dinner. I cook rice, vegetables, and chicken. I eat at the table. After dinner, I wash the dishes. Then I read a book or I listen to music. At 10 o'clock, I go to bed. I am sleepy. I close my eyes. I think about my day. My life is simple, but I am happy.
Well done! If that story felt easy, you understood basic present simple, daily routines, and simple vocabulary. Your English is at least A1. Now, let's move to A2, the elementary level. At this stage, sentences become longer and more connected. You'll hear past tense, future plans, and descriptions of habits and routines. Let's meet Jack. By the way, if this feels too fast, you can always go to the video settings, select playback speed, and slow it down. Choose the speed that works best for you. There's no rush.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm 28 years old and I live in a medium-sized town. I work in a supermarket. I've worked there for 2 years now. My job is not difficult, but sometimes it gets busy. Every weekday, I wake up at 7 o'clock. I don't like waking up early, but I have to. I take a shower, get dressed, and eat breakfast. I usually eat cereal with milk and drink coffee. Coffee helps me wake up. I leave my house at 8 o'clock. I drive to work because the supermarket is far from my home. It takes about 20 minutes. When I arrive, I say hello to my coworkers. We are friendly with each other. We often joke and laugh during breaks. My job is to help customers find products. I also put new items on the shelves. Sometimes I work at the cash register. Do you know what a cash register is? It's the machine where people pay for their groceries. At lunchtime, I eat in the break room. I bring food from home. Yesterday, I brought a sandwich and an apple. Today, I have pasta. I like pasta. After work, I usually go to the gym. I exercise for 1 hour. I lift weights and run on the treadmill. Exercise makes me feel good. It gives me energy. On weekends, my life is different. I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. I love weekends. Sometimes I meet my friends. We go to the cinema or we play video games at someone's house. Last Saturday, we watched a funny movie. We laughed a lot. On Sundays, I visit my parents. They live in the same town. My mom always cooks a big lunch. We eat together and talk about our week. It's nice to spend time with family. In the evenings, I like to relax. I watch TV shows or I listen to music. Sometimes I call my girlfriend. She lives in another city, so we don't see each other every day. But we talk on the phone every night. I'm going to visit her next month. I'm really excited about that. My life is quite simple, but I enjoy it. I have a good job, good friends, and a loving family. What else do I need?
Great! If you followed that story without much difficulty, your English is at least A2. You understood past and future tenses, connected ideas, and descriptions of weekly routines. Now we're moving to B1, the intermediate level. This is where things get more interesting. Sentences become more complex. You'll hear opinions, reasons, and personal experiences with more detail. Let's meet our next speaker. Her name is Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah and I'm 32 years old. I work as a primary school teacher. I've been teaching for about 7 years now, and honestly, I still love my job. Every day is different, and working with children keeps life interesting. My typical day starts quite early. I wake up at 6 because I need to be at school by 7:30. I'm not really a morning person, but I've gotten used to it over the years. I make myself a quick breakfast, usually toast with jam and a cup of tea. I can't function without my morning tea. I teach a class of 25 children. They're 8 years old, which is a wonderful age. They're curious, energetic, and full of questions. Sometimes they ask me things I don't know the answer to. Last week, one student asked me why the sky changes colors at sunset. I had to look it up online during lunch break. Teaching isn't just about standing in front of the class and talking. It's about understanding each child's needs. Some children learn quickly, while others need more time and patience. I try to make my lessons fun and interactive. We do group activities, play educational games, and sometimes we even go outside to learn about nature. Of course, the job has its challenges. Managing a classroom full of energetic children isn't always easy. Some days, they just won't sit still or pay attention. When that happens, I have to be creative. I might change the activity, tell a story, or give them a short break to move around. After school finishes at 3 o'clock, my work isn't done. I usually spend another hour or two preparing lessons for the next day or marking homework. It can be tiring, but I think it's important to give each student proper feedback. In the evenings, I like to disconnect from work completely. I enjoy cooking, so I often try new recipes. Last night, I made a vegetarian curry. It turned out really well. I also like reading. I'm currently reading a novel about a woman who travels around the world. It's making me think about taking a trip myself. On weekends, I try to balance rest and socializing. Saturday mornings are for sleeping in. I don't set an alarm, and I wake up naturally around 9 or 10. It feels amazing. In the afternoons, I might meet friends for coffee or go for a long walk in the park near my house. Looking back, I think I made the right career choice. Teaching isn't the highest paying job, and it's definitely not the easiest. But when a child finally understands something they've been struggling with and their face lights up with pride, that feeling makes everything worth it. I've learned so much from my students, too. They've taught me to be more patient, more creative, and to see the world with fresh eyes. Children notice things adults often miss: the shape of clouds, the sound of rain, the way light shines through leaves. So yes, my life is busy, but it's also meaningful, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Excellent! If you understood Sarah's story comfortably, your English is at least B1. You followed personal experiences, opinions, reasons, and more complex sentence structures. Now, let's step up to B2, the upper intermediate level. At this stage, speakers sound more fluent and natural. You'll hear detailed storytelling, reflections, abstract ideas, and a wider range of vocabulary. Our next speaker is Tom.
Hi there, I'm Tom. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a journalist for an online news platform. It's a career I sort of fell into by accident, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions I never planned to make. Let me explain. When I was at university, I studied history. I was fascinated by how events from the past shaped the world we live in today. But when I graduated, I realized something important. I didn't want to spend my life in a library or a classroom. I wanted to be part of the present, not just studying the past. So I started writing. At first, it was just a blog. Nothing fancy, just my thoughts on current events, book reviews, things I found interesting. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but slowly, people started noticing. I began to receive comments, messages, even a few emails from readers who said my writing helped them understand complex topics. That's when I realized something powerful. Good writing doesn't just inform people, it connects them. It makes the unfamiliar feel approachable. It gives people a voice, or helps them understand voices they've never heard before. Eventually, I applied for a job at a small online news site. They hired me as a junior writer. My first assignments were simple: short articles about local events, interviews with small business owners, summaries of reports. Nothing glamorous. But I treated every piece like it mattered, because to someone out there, it probably did. Over time, I moved up. Now I write longer investigative pieces. I cover topics like education policy, environmental issues, and social inequality. These aren't easy subjects. They require research, interviews, fact-checking, and a lot of patience. Sometimes I spend weeks on a single article. What I love most about journalism is the people I meet. Every interview is a window into someone else's life. I've spoken to teachers, activists, refugees, scientists, artists, people from all walks of life. Each conversation teaches me something new, not just about the world, but about empathy and resilience. But journalism isn't always rewarding. There are difficult moments too. Sometimes I write about painful topics, stories of loss, injustice, or hardship. It can be emotionally draining. I've interviewed people who've lost their homes, their families, their sense of safety. Listening to those stories, holding space for someone's pain, it stays with you. And then there's the pressure of deadlines. There's always another article due, another event to cover, another interview to schedule. Sometimes I feel like I'm running on a treadmill that never stops. But I've learned to manage it. I set boundaries. I take breaks. I remind myself that I can't pour from an empty cup. After work, I try to step away from screens. I know that sounds ironic for someone who works online, but it's necessary. I go for runs. I cook. I meet friends. Sometimes I just sit in a cafe with a book and a coffee, watching people walk by. I've also started keeping a journal. Writing for myself, not for an audience, feels completely different. There's no pressure, no structure, no expectation. It's just me and my thoughts. And sometimes In those quiet moments, I rediscover why I started writing in the first place. Not for recognition or money, but because words help me make sense of the world. Looking ahead, I don't know exactly where my career will take me. Maybe I'll write a book one day. Maybe I'll shift into documentary work. Or maybe I'll keep doing exactly what I'm doing now. What matters to me isn't the title or the platform. It's the impact. If my writing helps even one person feel less alone, more informed, or more hopeful, then I've done my job. Because at the end of the day, journalism isn't really about information. It's about connection. It's about reminding people that their stories matter, that their voices deserve to be heard. And that's a mission I'm proud to be part of.
Fantastic! If that story felt natural and you followed Tom's reflections easily, your English is at least B2. You understood detailed narratives, abstract ideas, and fluent expression. Now, we're approaching the advanced levels. Next is C1, where English becomes sophisticated, nuanced, and deeply expressive. You'll hear complex ideas, extended reflection, and a rhythm that feels almost poetic. Let's meet Rachel.
Hello, my name is Rachel and I'm 42 years old. For the past 15 years, I've worked as a clinical psychologist. It's a profession that requires not only knowledge and training, but also something harder to quantify: the ability to sit with another person's pain without flinching, without rushing to fix it, without turning away. When people ask me what I do, I usually say I'm a psychologist. But that word doesn't fully capture the reality of the work. What I really do is listen. I listen to stories that people have never told anyone before. I listen to fear, grief, shame, hope. I listen to the parts of people they've tried to bury, the parts they're afraid to acknowledge. And in that listening, something remarkable happens. People begin to hear themselves. They begin to see patterns they couldn't see before. They realise that the narratives they've carried for years, stories about being unworthy, unlovable, broken, aren't necessarily true. They're just stories. And stories, unlike facts, can be rewritten. My path to this career wasn't straightforward. In fact, I initially studied law. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, someone who argued cases, defended the innocent, pursued justice. But during my second year of law school, I volunteered at a crisis helpline. That experience changed everything. I remember my first call. It was late at night. A woman called, her voice barely above a whisper. She told me she didn't want to exist anymore. I didn't have a script. I didn't have answers. All I had was my voice and my willingness to stay on the line with her. We talked for over an hour. By the end of the conversation, she was breathing more steadily. She thanked me. She said that just knowing someone was listening, really listening, made a difference. That night, I realised something profound. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer another person isn't advice or solutions, it's presence. So I left law school. I enrolled in a psychology programme. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, partly because I felt like I was letting people down, my parents, my professors, myself. But deep down, I knew it was the right choice. The training was intense. Psychology isn't just about theories and diagnoses. It's about learning to hold complexity. People aren't simple. They don't fit neatly into categories. A person can be both strong and vulnerable, both hopeful and despairing. They can carry trauma and resilience in the same breath. Now, in my practice, I see clients with a wide range of concerns. Some are dealing with anxiety or depression. Others are navigating grief, relationship difficulties, or identity questions. What strikes me again and again is how universal certain struggles are. The details differ, but the core emotions, fear of rejection, longing for connection, the ache of not being seen, these are deeply human experiences. One of the most challenging aspects of my work is managing boundaries. I care deeply about my clients, but I also have to protect my own emotional well-being. There have been times when I've carried someone's story home with me, when I've lain awake at night thinking about a client who's suffering. It's a delicate balance, staying compassionate without becoming consumed. Supervision and peer support have been essential. I meet regularly with other therapists to discuss difficult cases, to process my own reactions, to remind myself that I don't have to carry this work alone. There's a certain humility in admitting that you don't have all the answers, that you're still learning, still growing. Outside of work, I try to cultivate spaces of lightness and joy. I garden. There's something deeply grounding about working with soil, planting seeds, watching things grow. Gardening has taught me patience. Not everything blooms on the timeline you expect. Some plants need more time, more care. Others thrive with minimal intervention. I also paint, not professionally, just for myself. Painting allows me to express things I can't put into words. Colours, shapes, textures, they bypass the rational mind and speak to something deeper. When I paint, I'm not trying to create something beautiful or meaningful. I'm just allowing whatever's inside me to emerge. Over the years, I've come to see my work as a form of witness. I bear witness to people's struggles, their courage, their transformation. I see them at their most vulnerable, and I hold that vulnerability with care. And in doing so, I've learned as much about myself as I have about them. Therapy, I've realised, isn't a one-way street. Yes, I offer guidance and support, but my clients also teach me about resilience, about the complexity of the human heart, about the many ways people find meaning in suffering. There's a quote I often think about: "The wound is the place where the light enters you." It's from the poet Rumi. I've seen this truth play out countless times. People don't heal by pretending they're not hurt. They heal by turning toward the pain, by allowing themselves to feel it, by finding the courage to ask for help. If there's one thing I hope my clients take away from our work together, it's this: you are not broken. You are not beyond repair. You are a human being navigating a complicated world, and you deserve compassion, especially from yourself. And so I continue to show up, day after day, to sit with people in their darkest moments and their brightest ones. It's not an easy job, but it's one I'm profoundly grateful to do. Because in the end, what we all need most is to be seen, to be heard, to know that we're not alone.
Incredible. If you followed Rachel's story with ease and appreciated the depth of her reflection, your English is at least C1, advanced level. You understood abstract concepts, nuanced expression, and sophisticated vocabulary. Now we reach the final level, C2, expert, near native fluency. At this stage, English flows like poetry. Every word is chosen carefully. Ideas are layered, emotions are subtle, and the rhythm feels effortless. Let's meet our final speaker, Daniel.
My name is Daniel. I'm 48 years old, and for much of my life, I've wrestled with a single persistent question. What does it mean to live well? Not to live successfully. That's a different question entirely, one preoccupied with metrics and milestones. No, I mean to live well in the truest sense, to inhabit your days with intention, to feel aligned with something deeper than ambition, to move through the world with both humility and conviction. I didn't always think this way. When I was younger, I believed that meaning was something you acquired, through achievement, recognition, accumulation. I studied economics, worked in finance, climbed the proverbial ladder, and for a while, it felt exhilarating. The promotions, the salary increases, the sense of upward momentum. But somewhere along the way, the exhilaration faded. I remember sitting in a glass-walled office overlooking the city, surrounded by the trappings of success, and feeling hollow. Not unhappy exactly, just empty, as if I'd been moving so quickly that I'd outrun myself. That realization didn't arrive as a sudden epiphany. It crept in slowly, like water seeping through a crack. Small moments of dissonance, conversations that felt performative, days that blurred into sameness. A growing sense that I was living someone else's definition of a good life, not my own. So I made a choice. I left my job. Not impulsively. I planned it carefully, saved money, spoke to people I trusted. But I left. And in the silence that followed, I began to hear something I hadn't heard in years. My own voice. The first few months were disorienting. Without the structure of work, time felt both vast and fragile. I'd wake up with no meetings, no deadlines, no external demands. And I had to confront the question I'd been avoiding. Who am I when no one's watching? I started small. I read, not for productivity or self-improvement, but for pleasure. I read poetry, philosophy, novels. I let words wash over me without needing to extract meaning or utility. And slowly, I began to remember what it felt like to be curious rather than strategic. I also walked, miles and miles through the city and beyond. Walking, I discovered, is a form of meditation. The rhythm of footsteps, the shift of light through trees, the quiet hum of the world moving around you. In those walks, I wasn't trying to arrive anywhere. I was simply present. Over time, I began to write. Not for publication, not for an audience, just fragments, observations, questions. Writing became a way of thinking, of untangling the threads of my own experience. And in that process, I realized something important. Clarity doesn't come from finding answers. It comes from learning to sit comfortably with uncertainty. Eventually, I found my way back to work, but differently. I now work as a consultant, helping organizations think more deeply about leadership, culture, and purpose. It's work that feels aligned with who I am now, not because it's prestigious or lucrative, but because it allows me to engage with questions that matter. How do we create environments where people feel valued? How do we balance efficiency with humanity? How do we lead without losing ourselves?
I've learned that true leadership isn't about authority or control. It's about presence. It's about listening deeply, not just to what people say, but to what they can't quite articulate. It's about creating space for others to think, to question, to grow. Outside of work, my life has become quieter, more deliberate. I spend less time accumulating and more time appreciating. I cook slowly. I savor meals.
I notice the way light changes throughout the day, the texture of seasons, the subtle shifts in mood and energy. I've also rekindled relationships that I'd neglected. Friendships require tending, like gardens. You can't assume they'll flourish on their own. You have to show up, ask questions, listen without agenda. And in doing so, you discover that connection isn't transactional. It's reciprocal, layered, endlessly renewing. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is this: life isn't a problem to be solved. It's a paradox to be lived. We crave certainty, but growth happens in ambiguity. We seek control, but wisdom emerges from surrender. We fear stillness, but peace is found in the pause between breaths. I think often about impermanence. Nothing lasts. Not success, not failure, not joy, not sorrow. Everything arises, lingers briefly, and dissolves. And yet, there's a strange comfort in that. If nothing is permanent, then nothing is final. Every ending contains the seed of a new beginning. These days, I measure my life differently, not by accomplishments or accolades, but by moments of genuine presence. A conversation where I felt truly seen. A morning where I noticed the birdsong. An evening where I sat in silence and felt whole. I don't know if I found the answer to my original question, what it means to live well. Perhaps there is no single answer. Perhaps the question itself is the point. Perhaps living well is less about arrival and more about orientation. A willingness to keep asking, keep listening, keep adjusting course. What I do know is this: the life I live now feels more mine. Not perfect, not finished, but authentic. And in a world that constantly asks us to be more, do more, achieve more, there's a quiet radicalism in simply being enough. So I continue, not racing towards some distant goal, but moving gently through each day. Present, attentive, grateful. And in that gentle movement, I've discovered something ineffable. A sense of homecoming. Not to a place, but to myself.
And there we have it. 6 levels, 6 voices, 6 journeys through the English language. If you made it all the way through, congratulations. If you found some levels easy and others challenging, that's completely natural. Language learning isn't linear. It's a process of gradual growth, small victories, and ongoing discovery. Remember, your level isn't a judgment. It's simply a snapshot of where you are right now. And wherever that is, you can always keep growing. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'm Mike, and this is Daily English. Keep listening, keep learning, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Until next time, goodbye and happy learning.